think it'd be huge. I mean, I'm excited for every big event that comes this direction because I want to showcase this area to the world. And I remember how often when I first got to England, it was like, I'm from Washington, and they'd be like, oh, Washington, D.C. And I'd say, no, Washington State. And then you'd have to be Seattle, you have to explain that. And I think, obviously, with some of the things that Adrian touched upon, the huge emphasis from what Microsoft and Boeing and Amazon and Starbucks and, the Seattle across the world has grown so much. And I think this would just put a punctuation mark on what this region has been able to do and the unbelievable growth over the last 20, 30 years. And again, Adrian commented on what Bellevue was when he was a kid. I mean, I'm from Olympia, what Olympia was and what the difference was coming from this whole region. So I think it would just be again just show this region on the world stage even more.
Having MLS Cup here, such a great success, is that a selling tool?
Well, it didn't hurt. I mean, I think anytime you can show FIFA these little opportunities of what this region is able to do, having MLS Cup sell out in less than an hour, I mean, just shows you what this community has done for this sport for so many years, and that's just the latest example of a long list.
What was it like playing the World Cup?
World Cup obviously is the pinnacle, but it's such a small part of your whole career, and so you have these little moments, and from where U.S. soccer had gone from qualifying for 1990 for the first time in 40 years to then hosting in 94 to then being almost like an expectation. And then when the team didn't qualify for the last one, it was like, well, wait a minute, this is just something that we do. It's not that it took 40-year gap between us getting back to one, and then it was all of a sudden it was, well, wait a minute, this is a given. Well, it's showing that it's not a given, because not only we have an off year, but then you look at what CONCACAF in general has continued to grow. So it would be another massive step forward, and for me to be a part of from the early part to then being able to play in several to then broadcasting in one to then being able to then be home and be part of one in my host city would be unbelievable.
Amy, same question. What was it like to play? What was it like to be part of World Cup?
Well, I have to say that, and I tell our kids this all the time, when you're a world champion, all it means is for one moment in time that you were the best in the world. But what I hearken back on is all of those moments. All of those moments is what that gold medal means. And so, once you're on the podium, you're like, okay, that's over. Now what? So it was a little bit sad and unbelievable all at the same time. You don't realize that everyone says it's about the journey. Right? That's when you realize it. I go home and I still need to pay my rent and still struggling to make ends meet, so not a whole lot changed. What I will say is all of those moments that I'm remembering happened here in Seattle. All of those moments, from me starting to play the sport to the coaches that I still leaned on, Clive Charles being one of them, was able to play for him for a brief moment in time. All of the friends, all of the memories, the journey started here. And I think what we take for granted growing up as kids here is that soccer has always been in the fiber of Washington State. And I talk to friends of mine and I say, wait, you didn't have that?
Right.
You weren't supported like we were supported. And so this truly is a soccer state and always has been. It has run through the fiber. I mean, the reason that Lumen Field is here was on the voters, the soccer voters. Right. And so I think we take it for granted how truly special it is. And it's really hard to sell that because we know it. It's really, I want people to see what we see. I want people to feel how we feel being a part of this soccer story.
I was a teenager to see World Cup in Germany, and I fell in love with the sport.
Yeah.
So you're saying the same thing could happen with kids who don't play soccer now, if it's in our own backyard.
Are there kids here that don't play soccer? I mean, I think that's the part I think that Amy mentioned is that we didn't realize that we had such a great infrastructure until we started talking to other people that didn't, because it has been here for so long, and anything that can just take that another step forward. I mean, I don't know how you can, but this is I think the only way you can is to bring a full World Cup here and to have everybody be able to, experience that without having to, travel to the different countries to do it, which would be, I think, unbelievable for the area.
I'm telling you, the Sounders and OL Reign, it's not just people that play soccer that are in the stands. And that's what I love about a big city still having the community feel. And sports are what gives it that community feel. And if there's anybody that knows how to rally, it's Seattle people around sports. So when I go to a Sounders game, I don't run into my soccer teammates all the time. I run into my dentist. And I run into my, my old third grade teacher or whatever. It's for everybody. And I'm sure Seattle can make that happen.
I'm hogging all the questions. You guys have some?
Yeah, I have a question. So it's funny you say that because I grew up playing soccer here too, and I remember playing World Cup. That was one of our favorite games. What team are you? Okay, I want to know what you guys think about. I want to know about the youth. What do you think it would mean to the youth soccer players to have this in our backyard?
Well, I think more people will have eyes on the sport for sure. Like Kasey mentioned, there are fan zones. There'll be street corners that, everyone's got their latte, but they're locked in on the game, and everyone will get to be a part of it. And I think people that we've seen it in World Cup years when it hasn't been here, where at University of Washington, the soccer camps we ran were full on the World Cup years because everyone was following it. Hey, this is a sport I'd like to try. So us goalkeepers, we may not have liked World Cup as much as you did because it's everyone versus just one person.
That was tough for the Griffin years.
For sure, but I can't imagine not every kid wanting to be a piece of it and saying, hey, I was at this, or hey, did you see this? And that's where it starts. You hear it all the time. If you see it, you can be it. So they're going to see it firsthand.
My son would play FIFA, and his name is Cameron, so he would play as Cameroon, and he'd play against me and be like, "Oh, Dad, you got sent off again," So I mean, you can imagine that. Okay, maybe the U.S. won't necessarily play here, but then you'd have the different countries that would come in, and the fans would then adopt those countries that come in and have the fun with that, and be at the hotel. I mean, you'll see different things. So when Barcelona was here, when we played Barcelona, the friend of mine was the general manager of the Four Seasons. And he said people wouldn't understand. There would be 400 people in that little courtyard trying to get a glimpse of Messi. Now, extrapolate that by what number as you're having different major countries here with their players and their fans coming into town to be a part of that, mixing with the huge soccer community here. Because you have to understand, it's not, I remember when we played Italy in Kaiserslautern, it truly was a 50,000 seat stadium with 25,000 people rooting for the U.S., 25,000 rooting for Italy, because it was the closest stadium to the Italian border, and those that came over. You have Ramstein Air Force Base in Kaiserslautern that has 20,000 expat Americans there, the 15,000 traveling American supporters that come over. So it's not just for the Seattle community, it's when those fans come into the city as well, mesh with the fans that are here that were able to get tickets. Completely it'll be an amazing atmosphere in the city.
Why is grass such a big deal? Why can't FIFA get up with the times and say, you know what, synthetic turf is okay?
It's not.
I knew you were going to say that.
Look, they've come a long way, and obviously when you're looking at sports where you're going to have the volume that you have to have, then obviously artificial makes a lot of sense. But it's a different game, and obviously to be able to have it, on the right surface, disappointing for those of us. We understand, Sounders players understand, why we're playing on artificial, but we all want to play on a great grass surface, and FIFA rightfully so demands it.
It's better than crushed brick.
Yeah, we played on that too.
What are some of the playing differences that you notice from artificial to grass? I've heard that artificial is slicker. This can be a little bit quicker.
It can be quicker. It can be slower. It's inconsistent depending on, you see them water it at a time. Well, that will evaporate on hot days halfway through the half, and then it's a different way that the ball plays, it's also far more demanding on your body. My recovery time from playing on grass was at least 2 days shorter than playing on artificial. So when you're talking about games being played in 4 or 5 days, yeah, it's a toll. And again, I think it's that consistency, because there is completely different. You played on the turf in the old Giant Stadium. It was the worst thing in the history of the world to then go to a new field that had been replaced sooner. So this way they can say, okay, we can have a much closer equality in the consistency of the pitches.
I think heat too. Heat
Makes
can
a
be a factor.
big difference.
I think elite level players can make the ball do more things, and it becomes a much more spectacular sport. It's easier to get the ball sit. You know, if you backspin or if you bend it and it hits the turf, sometimes it's a little bit more unforgiving and it just sails out of bounds. Where on a grass field, I think special players can be exceptional, and that's what I like about it. And it feels so much better on your body.
So you can be more creative on grass. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, from an individual. I mean, the creativity from a team sport, I don't think that changes. I think the Sounders are phenomenal on it because they have so many fast players that it suits them right now because they can keep up with it. And even kids, it's the ball can roll a little bit slower and it can decelerate and you can control it a little bit easier.